the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Allison Nissen, and today I am lucky enough to have with me Chrysa Keenon. Chrysa, can you give me a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write/represent?
Yeah, for sure. So I am a junior literary agent at Cyle Young Literary Elite agency. I've been in the publishing industry for about 5 years now. I started out writing book reviews for the ECLA, and then I interned at GenZ Publishing. After my internship at the publishing house, I was really interested in working more with authors, and so I interned at the Seymour agency, and from there moved to Cyle Young Literary. So I really like having personal relationships with my authors. I think that was one of the things that I really enjoyed the most about working on the other side of the desk as an assistant editor. And so, yeah, as far as the things that I represent, I'm really looking at middle grade, low fantasy, educational picture books. So that's nonfiction, and adult fantasy and romance. Like, I take romance in basically any genre. So if you have it, please send it to me. Yeah, and I am a writer also myself. I've written about 2 books so far, 2 young adult books. Haven't gotten them published. It's not really my time to shine with all of that. I would much rather focus on my clients, but I am quietly drafting, and so it's a hobby as well. So yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
I am so glad that you do both, that you enjoy the writing side and you enjoy the representation side. I find it so fascinating when you're able to really understand the market, because it's so different when you're just on the writing side. It's like this big mystery. There's a curtain there, and we don't understand quite what happens on the other side of the curtain. And so then we ask, we have interviews like this one, and we follow people on places like Twitter and Instagram just to see what else goes on. But what are the secrets? Like, what's the biggest difference between sitting down to write versus the finding something to publish or represent?
Yeah. So I, as a writer, love the creativity that comes into making a draft. But as an agent, it's a little bit harder to sell that creativity, because there always has to be that market. And when you're writing a book, you shouldn't ever write to a market, because then you kind of take the fun out of writing. And that, you can write to a trend, but it might not always be the most fun thing to do if you're writing to something that's popular right now. And so I think what I really like about getting the best of both worlds is that I can relay that to my clients and just kind of be like, hey, I know you're really passionate about this, and so let's go with that passion and try to find a way to sell it.
So you like to take the passion that the author has and advise them not to go towards the market. So when you say towards the market, you're talking about trends, and you're talking about an actual, the quote unquote rules of a genre, and just letting them write the way they see fit for their style. Or I guess you still have to follow the trend. I mean, not the trends, the genre rules.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course you would have to follow the genre rules. Otherwise, it really wouldn't be able to sell very well. And I do have to come in and say, well, we should try doing this instead, and tweaking the story like that. But always for the first draft, I would say write for you. And then later on, when I come in, I should really be seeing the second or third or fifth draft, that's when we can really start tweaking it towards the market and what the current needs of that are, And so I think that's really what I was trying to say, because you should follow the rules. They're there for a reason.
That's really interesting. Tell me about what happens with a slush pile. How does this, people send in the queries, they send in their manuscripts or just letters of, information for seeking information. And then what happens?
Yeah. So usually I get a lot of emails, obviously, from a lot of writers wanting me to look over their work. And I want to look over all of their work, but sometimes it can be a lot. And so I really wanted to talk about the 4 different ways to stand out, because I think there are some tactile ways, tactile meaning tips and tricks that you can stand out for that, at least for me. And so one of them I would say would be researching your agency beforehand and what they are specifically wanting. So for example, for our submission guidelines, I don't like to read attachments just because I don't want to open a file on my computer where I don't know where it's coming from. It could hold a virus. I know some agents at my agency have had that happen to them before, and so I'm very nervous about that happening to me. So I would much prefer if you had all of your materials copied and pasted into the document, you know, or into the email, I would say. And so something like that, like taking the extra time to research that and know that that's something that I would prefer, really shows me that you have done your research and know what I would like to see. A second way that I really think that you could stand out would be putting your comparative titles in the subject line of your email. Like, so for example, if you were writing a paranormal romance with like an epic romance and two vampire brothers, you could say Vampire Diaries meets The Princess Bride. And so when I see that in the subject line of my email, that automatically makes me want to open that email and see what's that, you know, because that's exciting to me, instead of just having like query the Vampire Brothers feud or something, you know what I mean? Instead of the title, that just automatically makes me want to jump to that. A third way that I really like to see my authors, or not my authors, but people querying me do, is personalizing their message. I know that sometimes people spell my name wrong, and that kind of hurts a little if you spell my name wrong, because it doesn't really start out our professional relationship very well if you can't take the time to spell my name. And so little things like that really do make an impact. And then the fourth way I would say would be bolding all of the important information in the email. So then that way my eye automatically jumps to that. And what I mean by that is like your genre, your word count, any other eye-catching information that I might need to know. If you've won awards for this book, if you've have a really big connection in the industry that you think might be prevalent for me to know, then bolding that piece of information so my eye automatically jumps to that would be very helpful for me.
I love that you have these 4 solid pieces of advice. Mm-hmm. Do you think other agents, do they also have their own set of rules or pieces of advice?
I mean, I know every agent is different, every agency is different. And so I can really only speak to what works for me personally. And that's like those sort of things that I have found being extremely helpful, just because I know sometimes query letters can be very long and they're very chock full of some fat, like information that doesn't really need to be there. And so just bolding certain things like that, like in a business letter, a query is kind of like an introductory business letter, can really help with that. And so I'm not sure if other agents do it like that, but it just helps with me personally. So
I think it's a great piece of advice. Mm. I'm going to recommend it to everybody because of why
Good.
not?
Right. And it can't hurt to do it either. Like, I don't think anyone would get offended with having important pieces of information bolded. So
exactly. Well, it ruins the aesthetic, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it probably makes it more aesthetically pleasing because your eye automatically goes to the important pieces and then your brain says, check.
Yeah.
Let's talk about word count. Does word count really matter?
Yes. So I feel like there's been a lot of talk about like agent fatigue, getting over 100,000 word books in almost every submission. And sometimes I can feel that. And I feel like I occasionally will get through a week where I'm just reading like so much, and that takes so much time with longer word counts. But knowing your word count in a submission does really matter, because if you're pitching me a picture book and it's 3,000 words, then that makes me think that you really don't know how long a picture book is, because I don't know about you, but you know, a little kid probably doesn't want to sit through 3,000 words of that, you know? So that's where I think that can come in, because it shows me that if you have a correct word count, it shows me that you have read through other books in your genre and you really know where like that sweet spot is. And those numbers are very easily Googleable. Googleable, is that a word?
Let's call it Googleable.
I know, yeah. Yeah, it's a quick internet search away. And yeah, another thing that I think authors sometimes don't look at sort of at the creative side, because sometimes they just let the story go, which is great, you know, and I really appreciate that. But if you're trying to sell a 200,000 word young adult fantasy, that will be so much harder for me to approach an editor with, because that's really not something that they would spend a lot, like it's even more time for them as well. It's as there is a lot more time with me, like reading through it, with editing, with all of that. And so that's why it's really important to find just that like happy little middle.
Have you had conversations with your authors about lowering their word count? I mean, do they like argue like, oh no, these are my babies, I can't get rid of this scene, I can't get rid of that scene because it's so, you know, it's so important, it's the most important part of the novel, and yet, you know, where it's a little bit excessive?
Yeah, so I have had conversations with my authors about shortening their word counts, and I'm very lucky enough to have clients that don't fight me on that sort of thing, especially when you come at it with a attitude of let's change this together, you know, instead of just saying you have to fix this and this is terrible and slashing like the manuscript into ribbons. If you come at it, I found that if I come at my client's work and say, this scene could be shortened, let's try this instead, how do you feel about this, what are 3 ways we can fix this, you know, and have that conversation instead of just demanding changes. And I think that's also very important for the creative process. So, but my clients are great. Yeah, exactly. It is a teamwork. It's very much a relationship. And so having a good relationship can really help a book bloom into a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Do you advocate for series?
For series, in my personal reading life, I don't really like reading series. I think it's just because I've always gravitated towards YA, and YA usually doesn't have a lot of series. Well, I mean, some of them do. But I like standalone novels. I can see how series would be attractive as readers, but as an agent, I do like series. They are a little harder to sell sometimes, but it depends on the genre, it depends on the writer. It's all very up in the air, you know.
I understand that there are pitching contests that happen on Twitter.
Yes, those are my favorite things. Have you ever done those before, or have you looked and seen them going on?
I have not, and I have to confess, and anyone who's actually listened to my podcast knows, Twitter really scares me.
Oh, it is a very scary place. Yes, Twitter is terrifying. Yeah, I've actually really backed off on what I post on Twitter just because everyone is so loud. And so, but Twitter pitches are really worth being on there, honestly. A little bit of information if you don't know what a Twitter pitch is. There are certain days out of the year where these events, like Pit Mad, for example, is a huge one. It's run by Pitch Wars, where you can, as an author, post a 1 or 2 sentence pitch, like in a tweet, and tweet that out using appropriate hashtags saying that you are participating in the event. If your book is YA, then you can hashtag YA. If it's a picture book, you can hashtag PB, that sort of thing. There's a whole list of hashtags on their website. And agents and editors can go through the pitches and or put like a little heart, depending on if you're using the app or using a desktop, they can put a heart on which pitches they want to see more of. And so for me as an agent, I really like participating just because I like to see things that are fresh and new that might not be in my inbox that people are writing. And then I also get to see what editors are liking, and I get to see what they're wanting too. So then that also gives me a little bit of like information about what they might be looking into. And so I've found a lot of my clients through Twitter pitches. I just think that they're a lot of fun. And yeah, they can be really helpful, but also at the same time, there are so many that happen in one day, you know, like probably hundreds of thousands. And so if you do participate in a Twitter pitch, I wouldn't feel bad if no one likes your pitch, just because there are a lot. And so it's hard for us to get through. Like I know sometimes other agents at my agency will spend days afterward just still scrolling through, going through all of the pitches to make sure that they see all of them. So, and they're a lot of fun.
You've been able to create relationships based on a Twitter pitch.
Yes. Isn't that crazy?
So do you then send them a private message like, this is great? Or how does that?
So sometimes it really depends on how excited I am. I don't DM people just because I don't want to be creepy. But if I'm really excited about it, then I might comment and be like, wow, this sounds great. Yeah, but so really it gives the power to the author as well. Because if some people, like if I was an author and 30 editors and agents liked my tweet, I then have the ability to go through and research the agency, research the agents, research the editors, see if they would even be a good fit for me to send my work to. And then if they're not, then I don't have to send it, you know, it's that easy. And so, oh, there's a bee by my face. I don't know why he's flying around. But so yeah, and I've definitely, I feel like for every Twitter pitch party, say that 5 times fast. For every event, I go through and like about 30 pitches and maybe 8 send their materials to me. And so it's really just a matter of if there's someone else that they would rather send it to, then they do. And so, and that's okay. It makes me sad, but you know, if they'd rather go with someone else, that's fine by me.
Is there a time of day? So if this is one day, right, it's 24-hour period. Is there a time of day that's best to, is it best to start at midnight, or is it best at 8 in the morning? Or I guess if it's worldwide, does it really matter?
It depends on the event. Like some events have hours. And so some might be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I know that there's always a rush in the morning and there's always a rush at noon, because that's when we're all on our lunch breaks and we can, you know, scroll through. And then there's always a rush around like 5 or 6, you know, like the average social media posting time. Yeah, as far as what time you post, I don't think that it necessarily matters, just because they're going to be there forever and people can retweet and like, and so that will continue to show up on your feed. But one thing I do think is important is to have a variety of tweets, because I know if I see a potential pitch that I really like and I want to know more, but I'm not, you know, dead set on liking it. If I go to that author's page and look for any more tweets and descriptions and varies on their pitch of their book, if I can't find any and they're just repeating the exact same tweet over and over again with the same wording, I'm like, well, you haven't given me more information. Like, I don't know if I would want this, you know? And so that's always important to vary the style of your pitch, because I know I've seen before people doing funny takes on song lyrics, people writing limericks, and then those, like when you get really creative, like that's when you get a lot of likes. And so that's not something you can do in a query. And so that's just another reason why I like Twitter pitching, because some people write jokes and puns and it can be really fun.
I am definitely going to check one of those out.
You
find
should.
That fascinating. I bet I could get lost in it pretty quickly.
Oh, you can. Yeah. So.
All right, Chrysa, this has been a great conversation. How can people get in touch with you?
If you want to query me, you can find the submission guidelines on Cyle Young Literary Elite, that website, or my website, ChrysaKeenon.com. If you want to query me, my email address is Chrysa@CyleYoung.com. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm just at Chrysa_Keenon. And Instagram, I believe my handle is Chrysa Keenon Writing, but my Instagram's under construction right now, so who knows if I'll still be on there. So yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and switch to our rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm so ready.
What is your favorite color?
Yellow. I used to have a Volkswagen Beetle that was yellow.
Did it have flowers on it?
No, no flowers, but it was still really fun.
I bet it was. What is your favorite season?
Oh, summer, definitely. I love being out by the beach and having the sun and the nice weather. It's great.
How many pillows do you have on your bed?
Oh my goodness. So I only have 2, but I feel like my boyfriend has like 7 or 8, you know. He hoards pillows and like builds a little fort around himself every night. And I'm like, I just need 1 or 2. Like, I don't need that many. So
All right. Well, thank you, Chrysa, for stopping by. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and thank you for doing this and taking time out of your day. This is really awesome. I've never been interviewed on a podcast before, so this is a lot of fun.
Ooh, I'm glad I was the first. Hey.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, you have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Allison Nissen. Allison out. Boom! We're all done.
Wow, awesome.
Chrysa Keenon has always loved stories, both reading and writing them. Her degree from Taylor University's acclaimed professional writing program helped her learn a thing or two about the craft, and she set her sights on working in the publishing industry. Chrysa kickstarted her career by interning with GenZ Publishing and the Seymour agency. By day, she works in editorial for a prominent bridal magazine. By night, she's a literary agent helping writers achieve their publishing dreams with the Cyle Young Literary Elite agency. She has over 500 published bylines in both fiction and nonfiction. Awards for her work include first place in science fiction fantasy for the Blue Seal Award. Learn more about Chrysa at her website, ChrysaKeenon.com. ChrysaKeenon.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us on the web at floridawriters.net.